keep them in mind. There we go. So recording has started, and if you want to keep any questions in the back of your head or have them written down in the chat, we will definitely get to them at the end. We've got plenty of time for Q&A. So we're going to start with a quick introduction to Peabody, as well as an introduction to the fund and the public participation framework, so we get a bit of a better idea of that. Thirdly, Akeem is going to come and share their experience about the Young People's Panel and working with Peabody, so some direct insight right there. And we're also going to get, in a fourth time, some grantee insight from the Mentoring Lab. Further, we're going to move on to a bit more information about the application and decision-making process for our applicants. And we're going to get further grantee insight from MVP Media. Finally, we're going to conclude with some next steps so we know which direction we're going into after this meeting. And finally, we're going to end the recording of the session and move on to some Q&A. So if that's good for everyone, I'm happy to get us started with an introduction to Peabody from Faith.
Hello, everyone. So my name's Faith Neal.
Sorry,
yeah,
Faith,
go ahead.
Just to interrupt, I think we'll also do some intros into who we are from Peabody and our partner organisation, the London Community Foundation. As young people are the most important part of this fund, I think I'm going to pass it to Eleanor to do her first introduction as also our lovely host for the evening.
Thank you, Sabrina. My name is Eleanor. I'm French originally, and I've been in the UK for 4 years. I just finished up my own experience in the Young Advisors program at Peabody, which I found out through living in a Peabody residence. I had a really wonderful time, and so I hope that you guys are going to hear more about that a bit later.
Hi everyone, so my name is Mel. I was one of the young people on the Young Advisors program as well, and I found out about the opportunity to put myself forward to be involved in young people's fund in the process. So yeah, that's why I am here on the call today.
Selma. So Selma's working on her IT. So in the meantime, we'll pass it over to our partner organisation, the London Community Foundation.
Hi everyone, thanks so much for coming today. It's great to see so many faces. My name's Harriet and I'm a grant programmes manager at London Community Foundation. So you may be aware of the London Community Foundation, but if not, as a community foundation, we support London's communities by convening donors to address community needs and supporting smaller local organisations. And I'll be on hand today to go through the Young People's Fund application decision-making process and next steps, and after that answering any questions that you might have. I'll pass over to my colleague Rich.
Thanks very much, Harriet. Good evening, everybody. I'm Rich, also work with London Community Foundation, and we're delighted to work with Peabody now on what is the third round of the Young People's Funds, and it's great to see how this particular programme just grows from year to year and develops. And also at London Community Foundation, we support Peabody on the Peabody Community Funds, the Thamesmead Community Fund as well, and also the Social Innovation Fellowship. So we're delighted to see all the great work that Peabody does in the community. And now I'm going to hand over to some of the Peabody team.
Thanks, Rich. Hi, everyone. So glad to see you all here. I am Emma and I am in the Youth Social Action team at Peabody. We work with the young people who are on this call and others, obviously, to give them different opportunities to get involved with advising Peabody and having their ideas implemented in real work. The Advisors is a really brilliant programme for that, and we've supported lots of different departments on Peabody, in Peabody so far, and they also or we're trying to get opportunities for young people to have paid work afterwards in Peabody. So yeah, that is an introduction to our work. I will hand over to my colleague Mariam in my team.
Hi guys, my name is Mariam. I work on the Youth Social Action team with Emma. So we're very passionate about young people and working with them. Yeah, so we obviously have grants like this. We also have super micro grants where we support organizations and young people to do community-led projects. So happy to be here and I'm glad to see you all here. I'll pass it on to Faith.
Hello, so my name is Faith Neal. I'm Office Administrator at Peabody, specifically in Peabody Community Foundation. Part of my job is administering our grants program, of which the Young People's Fund is one. Yeah, and I'm really excited to be here to share more with you today. Sabrina?
And I'm the Business Support Manager for the Peabody Community Foundation. I'm also your IT support, so if you have any questions, do message me. Also obviously you've seen our team's intros have been quite long, so to save a bit of time so that way we can give you guys the information you need. If you guys want to introduce each other, please do use the chat, and also feel free to kind of post any questions you have as well, and we'll make sure we'll pick those questions up during the Q&A. And Faith will take it over so that way she can give a bit of an introduction into Peabody.
Thank you. If we go to, there we go, that's me, I'm Faith Neal. So I'll first start off by talking about Peabody. So Peabody was founded in 1860 by George Peabody. George Peabody was an American philanthropist. He actually came to the UK for the first time in 1827. And a few years later lived in London, and seeing the poverty in the area, he was very keen to help alleviate poverty in the area. So now 160 years later, we are one of the largest and the oldest housing providers in the UK, and we are still committed to helping people make the most of their lives. At the moment, we are responsible for 71,800 homes in London and across the Southeast, and most of our residents live in London, predominantly in the inner boroughs such as Islington, Southwark, and Hackney, but those numbers are growing. If we go to the next slide. Thank you. We are currently undergoing a merger with Catalyst Housing. This will be finalized at the end of the financial year. So as of April 2023, Peabody will own and manage 104,000 homes for 222 customers across London and the home counties. So we'll be expanding our reach a little bit. Also, we will continue to provide specialist housing, care, and support for 20,000 people. Peabody is very focused on making things better for people and for communities, and we deliver a range of services through the Peabody Community Foundation. We deliver services to tackle key issues such as poverty, underemployment, and violence affecting young people, which is why we're all here today. The foundation was formed in 2016 and is key to Peabody achieving its social impact. In light of the merger, we are currently reviewing and updating our strategy, which is currently looking quite similar to the previous one we had. We are still upholding our vision and our commitment to helping our customers and communities be healthier, wealthier, and happier. We provide services through both direct delivery and indirect delivery. So direct delivery is where we personally directly provide services to customers when there's a gap in provision. And through indirect delivery, we deliver services through either partnership or via other organizations. And that is where our grants program comes in hand, as well as the community mobilization team. So we are, again, very keen to partner with organizations that could help benefit our customers. And we have resources as an organization and as a foundation that we can use to support our partners' work. So a part of this is, as you can see, 72 community buildings. We have volunteers with a wide range of skills, from finance to project management, a range of youth social action programs, a range of employment and enterprise programs as well. And we can go to the next slide, thank you. So Peabody is working to address violence affecting young people. And we understand that communication and aligned approach are essential to addressing violence affecting young people. We've noticed that despite over £250 million being committed to addressing violence affecting young people in the sector, there's limited evidence of funding for youth-led approaches, which is something that we definitely emphasize as a foundation. We are working with other housing organizations as a part of the Housing Association Youth Network in effort to address the violence affecting young people. HAIN, which is the Housing Association Youth Network, are focusing on 7 boroughs most affected by violence affecting young people. In partnership with them, we have identified stock partners and areas with high incidence of violence and are working together with other key partners to take an aligned approach. Alongside of this, we have also developed Peabody's response to violence affecting young people. So we've looked at the system, we've looked where funding is being allocated, we've identified a gap for projects designed and delivered with young people. And within Peabody, we know that young people understand their own experiences and the varied factors that result in violence affecting young people. And we also know they have the ability to design solutions, which is why we've put this at the heart of our response. So a part of this is the Burning the Village podcast, which we have helped set up and support. So the podcast was written, produced, and acted by young people based on their lived experiences, with the aim of raising awareness of young Londoners' perspectives on the root causes of youth violence in their city and to influence decision makers. Yes, Harriet says excellent, recommends it. We can try to find a link and we can put that in the chat as well if anyone's interested in having a listen. And we also have young person-led projects, a variety of projects, again, putting youth voice at the center. We have such things like the Young Leaders Program, which provides microgrants for young people, the Young Ambassadors Program, and Peabody Advisors. Yeah, we could go on to the next slide, that's fine. Perfect, thank you. And of course, a part of our addressing violence affecting young people, we have the Young People's Fund. So this was created in 2019 in response to the unprecedented rise in violent youth crime seen in London over the previous 3 years. So we have 5 boroughs that we have noted that have the highest combination of violence affecting young people, and also where Peabody have the most housing stock. So those boroughs are Hackney, Lambeth, Waltham Forest, Westminster, and Southwark. So these are the key priority boroughs for the fund. Something to note is both Peabody and LCF are committed to being good funders. So what this means is you can expect clear communication from us, an open dialogue when questions or issues arise, proportional reporting and application requirements, and a focus on the work being supported. So another thing that we like to emphasize with any of our grants is we definitely want to have people's feedback. We want to put people at the forefront of what we do. So we always take this into account. So with each round, we keep developing the fund, trying to make it better, trying to grow it, make it more sustainable in light of all the lessons we've learned. So from the first round, we had some really good applications. We funded some really great organizations, but overall, a lot of the applications were missing that key element of having youth voice at the center. So we changed that for round 2 and got some really good applications, funded some really good projects, and we just keep trying to grow, trying to emphasize having youth voice at the center. And this year is the first year we've made another big change. We've moved from 1-year funding to 2-year funding. And this was a direct result of feedback we received from previous grantees. They noted that 1-year funding was good, but having 2-year funding helped them sustain their projects, help their work with young people overall. So we can go to the next slide. Thank you. So I keep talking about having youth voice at the center and having youth involvement in these projects. So the public participation framework is a very helpful resource. You can find this on the LCF website under guidance, and hopefully you can read all the small print in there. We use the public participation framework to facilitate this change of having youth voice at the center of the applications. So this helps us gauge youth involvement. And the framework is designed to assist with identifying the level of participation that the public play in the process. So Spectrum is actually used internationally and is found in many public and voluntary sector plans. And the aim is to give all groups a clear guide to what we're looking for and a way to articulate young people's involvement in the project. So as you can see on the screen, all organizations applying to the Young People's Fund must refer to the public participation framework to articulate the level of involvement of young people in the design of the project. So you can see there's different categories on that chart. We have inform, we have consult, involve, collaborate, and empower. So this is also in the guidance if you need a reference for it as well. Applications that fall in the involve, collaborate, and empower stages will be prioritized over applications that fall into the consult stage. So kind of squint your eyes a little bit. If your screen's as small as mine, you can see under inform, it's simply providing public with balanced and objective information to assist them in understanding the problem. Consult has a bit more to it. It's obtaining public feedback on analysis, alternatives, and decisions. Involve means you're working directly with the public, or in this case, working directly with young people throughout the process to ensure that that their concerns and aspirations are understood and considered. Then we have collaborate, which means you're actually partnering with the public, or in this case, young people, in each aspect of the decision. And then empowering means you're placing the decision-making in the hands of the young people. So anything that's in those last three stages of involving, collaborating, and empowering will be prioritized. And then unfortunately, anything that falls within the inform stage will not be considered. So again, this is our emphasis that we want these projects to be very youth-led. We want youth voice to be at the center of everything. So hopefully this is a helpful guide, and Harriet's just put the link in the chat as well. Hopefully this is a helpful guide for you if you are looking to apply for the fund, to know how to frame your projects, how to frame your application. And if you have any questions, we'll go over how to contact us later, and you can feel free to ask any questions that come later or in the Q&A.
Thank you, Faith. That was incredibly thorough, and I think a wonderful explanation to better understanding how the fund functions as a whole and the Peabody inspiration behind it. I definitely enjoyed it. I think now is time for Akeem to give us a bit of insight into their own experience of the Young People's Panel and working with Peabody as a whole.
Unfortunately, I think Akeem is running slightly late. He was due to be here at 10:02, and I can't see him on the call.
Why don't we, Elaine, are you on the call?
Yes, I'm here. My camera's not working, but I am here.
Okay, no problem. Would you be okay doing your talk now?
Yes, please. Are you able to show the slide?
Yes, I think Sabrina's just getting the slides up, so thanks for that slight change.
Nice to see everybody here to find out more information about the fund. My name is Elaine Thomas. I'm the founder of a youth mentoring organisation called the Mentoring Lab, and we're based in Hackney. I founded the Mentoring Lab really based off of values that I developed from being raised by the Windrush generation. And we have been really focused on improving the quality of the mentoring we offer, and also sharing that information with others. So for the funding, and I just have to say that we really made the most out of this funding. I kind of want to say we rinsed it, but we really learned how to stretch the pound to be like £2 worth. And I'll speak on that a little bit later. But we focused on preventative mentoring because the aim of the fund was to prevent youth violence. And although we don't work with those who are currently in a gang or in other contextual safeguarding situations, we are really good at preventing. So just to let you know that the grant that we received was for 6 months weekly mentoring for 8 to 19-year-olds that lived in the area of E5 in London, Hackney. And actually that is we focus on the Peabody estate, in and around the Peabody estate. So if anybody here is from the Peabody estate, hello. And I just kind of want to give a trigger warning to give some context. Just one of the reasons why we applied for the funding was because a young boy aged 10 actually took his own life on the estate. And we had already built a relationship with Peabody. And 2 residents approached us and said, please, can you do a mentoring project, because this is going on. And Peabody Estate is around the corner from me, because I am actually a Peabody resident. So we really were, I didn't even mention that in the application, but we really wanted to get this fund so that we could do the work. And these are the different mentoring styles that we used. Go to the next slide, please. What we really wanted to focus on was low self-esteem and self-worth, contextual safeguarding issues. We had, I'm going to give you a short case study now. When we looked at social isolation, because this grant came right at the beginning of the COVID lockdown, we had a number of young people who, well, 2 in particular, who actually had sickle cell, and they were isolated from everybody. So our mentoring was able to support them online. And then also, when we're looking at social mobility for the older young people who are age 14 and older who engaged in the programme, we had a heavy focus on career guidance, even though it does underpin basically everything that we do. Next slide, please. Now, I'm not going to go into a lot about our beneficiaries. The slide is here really to pull out what you can see in bold, because I'm sure that many of us will have similar, if not like, beneficiaries. 23% of those who engaged in the programme got 10 detentions or more a month, and 58, nearly 60%, had been excluded from school. And there was a common denominator as well with the young people. Their parents were low-paid workers that worked in the city or in the public sector. I'm sorry, but it has to be said. Okay, so what we were dealing with were people who actually, families who have really high aspirations for their children, but just literally, especially during COVID, did not have the time to be able to provide those structures and also information to keep them safe, especially when they're on their way at school, on their way home from school, and at the weekend. Next slide, please. Okay, so some of the deliverables, like why were we doing the project? Okay, so we wanted to develop coping skills. We wanted to the young people to be more confident in themselves and also have better outcomes at school and in the future. Now, I know that we're not learning mentors in schools, but there's something really key. Many of the young people were at risk of school exclusion. And our mentoring, you can see here, we mentored 18 young people and delivered just under 200 mentoring hours. That's about, on average, like 10 hours mentoring each. But we were able to touch on or create this impact that you can see here. And I want to highlight that we did prevent 2 imminent school exclusions. One from a boy who was 10 years old in primary school, and they were going to put him into pupil referral unit because of anger issues. And another young person that wasn't getting on at all in an academy. Please do, just a little note for those of us who do work, especially for small organisations, we tend not to know the real value of the work that we do. So I kind of put some public health impacts here that I found out on this journey during the funding period. Okay, next slide, please. Now, these are the outcomes, and you'll all have probably similar outcomes, if not better. But I just wanted to highlight the feedback that we got from mentors. So the mentors who were mentoring during the lockdown, oh my gosh, God bless them. They had such a difficult time, but they were able to develop their mentoring skills. And that's something that came out and was highlighted in the feedback they gave. And I also wanted to speak about the schools. Many of the young people were able, through the program, they were able to feel safe, even though they either were not going to school because it was a lockdown, or they were vulnerable and isolating, or they actually saw this as an opportunity to not be in large groups. So they were able to, they engaged in the program, and there was a sense of community safety there when they couldn't get it from school. Next slide, please. I hope I'm okay for time, but because I want to touch on sustainability. Great. And I just want to speak on how we really did make the most out of this program. We just started, really, even though we had been doing training before. We really had just started. This was like our first grant, and we wanted to make the most out of it. So we got a lot of evidence. We spoke to a lot of people about the impact that this made in and around the area. We know that residents wanted it to continue afterwards. So thank you for listening to the feedback from all of us, and we've extended the grant to 2 years. But I wanted to speak on what we were able to do with the fund in extension of supporting the young people that we served. We were able to really look at how corporates and volunteers could play a role in helping us to extend our offer. We were able to share our knowledge, like we've got this mentoring toolkit, and we shared it with so many people, even parents whose children were being mentored had asked us, can we have one of these for ourselves? And we shared it. We do mentoring, okay? And we use this grant, and I hope you don't mind me saying this, but we used it to have evidence of a pilot project for future grants, because as you probably know, there's a lack of evidence of the impact on the benefits of mentoring here in the UK. There's loads in the States, but here in the UK. So this project really gave us a good standing ground to say that this mentoring project does work, and here's the evidence. And then I wanted to speak about quality and improvements. And if you could go to the next slide, I'm hoping that the next slide is the right one. Okay, this speaks about the toolkit. I just spoke about that. If you could go to the next one, please. Yeah, quality and improvements, thank you. And just wanted to say that the feedback that we got from parents, this parent in particular and another one, they spoke about partnering with a local organisation. And this parent said that actually the work that we do would be perfect with a charity, a long-standing charity here in Hackney. And we made contact with them, and we have been building a relationship with them and have worked alongside them as well, which is fantastic. But the feedback didn't just come from the parents and obviously the young people. Yes, we got feedback from young people, we got video feedback as well. It also came from the staff. And we spoke to the staff about the benefits of the programme, and as you know, I spoke earlier about the skills that they developed, but also looking at how we could develop. So if you could go to the next slide, what we could do to make the mentoring, our mentoring provision better. So we were looking at the fact that within some spaces, mentoring is really undervalued. So we looked at how we could actually improve that. We went and did a deep dive into mentoring, like research that supports mentoring delivery. Please check out Vygotsky. We realized that a lot of our work had to come hand in hand with advocacy, especially when it comes to educational justice. I cannot speak on the journey. We didn't expect to go down the educational justice route, but we are on that route now. And that started with this project and us supporting those young people who had imminent exclusions that we supported in preventing. And then also ensuring that the staff were trained, and the ability for us to be able to give the staff the training was fantastic feedback. If you could go to the next slide. And I just wanted to say that the London Community Foundation and Peabody together really listened to us as grantees. I cannot explain to you how, and you know it yourselves, there's some funders out there that you can't knock on their door. You probably give them a phone call, but that's kind of where it stops. London Community Foundation, they spoke with us, they spoke in a really inclusive way. We felt comfortable, they listened to us, and the grant that is there today, here today, has got elements of what we experienced and what we said we'd like to have. So I just want to thank you. It was a fantastic experience for us, and we're really grateful that you were our first experience of getting funding in London, because I don't, if it wasn't you guys, I don't know if I would have continued. It's cool out there. So yeah, no, thank you. And that's it with me.
Thank you so much, Elaine. That was such a thorough and detailed explanation of how successful your own experience with the grant has been. I think it's even more wonderful to hear about how previous feedback can feed into future grants and will just increase the success of that every time. And thank you again for taking the time to share that with us. Now we are ready to welcome Akeem to discuss their experience on the Young People's Panel and working with Peabody.
Super, thanks so much for the introduction. So a bit more about how I kind of got involved with Peabody. In 2020, I joined as a young person on the youth panel, the young people's panel. And that was literally right before the pandemic hit. And it was a process of just reaching out, being onboarded, so completed an application form, and then was given, I think, probably around 3 or 4 sessions of training. So I can see Harriet's on the call, and I think Richard as well. So they led the training, and it was more or less about giving us the skills to make, you know, the right decisions when kind of making decisions about who would get what sort of funding. So did that, and again, because it was towards the start of the pandemic, I think we originally planned to do it in March or April, and it got pushed back all the way to around September. Ended up doing it, and ended up some really, really great outcomes for charities across different areas of London that we supported. And yeah, just found it such a positive experience. From there, I actually got invited back to do the second year, so I did it last year as well. And again, it's really great, met loads of really great people, and heard from some really great organizations as well that were doing fantastic work supporting young people. And how that kind of evolved is I got the opportunity to do a program with Peabody, and it was a program where I got a chance to gain a qualification in design thinking, and that's now led to me joining Peabody as a community consultant, so supporting them on youth engagement. And yeah, that's kind of been my life cycle at Peabody. But yeah, it's been super good, and the program in itself has impacted loads of people. So yeah.
Thank you so much, Akeem. I think it's really great to get some firsthand experience about your participation. And I think now we are ready to hear a bit more from Tash from Head Held High, I believe.
Oh, I'm not.
Oh no, sorry.
I
might have read the order incorrectly. I'm so sorry.
I've got COVID at the moment. Sorry, I was just putting my details down, but I won't do any talking. But thank you. And it's lovely to be here. Sorry, I may have misread that. I just put my details.
Sorry, that's my mistake then. I think that actually we are going to be hearing more about the application and decision-making process. Sorry, Tash, I misread that.
No worries at all. Thank you so much for that introduction. I just want to first of all say a huge thank you to Elaine for that presentation. I think as much as you can talk about fund criteria and the process, actually hearing directly from a group that's had the funding and done amazing work through it is very impactful. I'm sure everyone will agree. And just, yeah, thank you for all your comments. It's very kind. I think that the work that community groups have done over the last 2.5 years that I've seen has just been really incredible. Times have been so tough, and they will get tougher, as we know, but I think just keep on going. What you're doing is really incredible, and if we can just try and support you in any way we can, we will. So just a huge thank you, Elaine. And also to Akeem, because I've worked quite closely now with Akeem for the last 2.5 years. He's been on the panel, he's participated in everything. He's been completely flexible during COVID when we had panels that were on and then they were cancelled and postponed. And he's just been really dedicated to the process. So a huge thank you. You've just been brilliant. So now I'll go on to the application and decision-making process. And I think what we really need to start with, and this is more for groups who aren't really aware of the London Community Foundation, we have a core criteria that what we need you to do after this presentation, if you're thinking, I really do want to apply for that fund, that sounds amazing, we're doing work, we want to do work that's very well aligned, and we want to apply. And a lot of organisations that we see are obviously, they might do work that's kind of aligned with the fund, and then they apply without actually looking at the core criteria. So what will happen, and it's such a shame because we see it so often, is the organisation will apply to us, and rather than checking the eligibility, they'll just do the whole application form, which obviously takes a long time, and we completely appreciate that, but they won't actually be eligible, which means that what happens is we have a first stage eligibility check on all applications, which is done by members in the team. And if your organisation isn't eligible because of the process and because of the kind of tight timeframes we have on it, we don't have time to be going back and checking all the kind of and working with you to develop those areas that might make you not eligible, and it will just mean that you don't get taken through to the shortlisting stage. So I'm going to quickly run through the eligibility criteria now, and when I'm going through it, if there's something you might not know about, or there's something that you're kind of confused about, if you do just take note of it now, and when we come to do the Q&A at the end, please do say, and hopefully we can answer your question now, or if there's something we need to follow up, we will. So eligible legal structures. So every organisation obviously will have a certain legal structure, and we have the ones listed on the presentation are the ones that we can fund. So you must be a charitable incorporated organisation or a company limited by guarantee that must also be registered as a charity, or a community interest company limited by guarantee, or a trust, or you could be an unincorporated association. If you do have an income of over 5k, or the grant will take you over 5k, then we will need you to register as a charity or a company. And you can be a community benefit society. So you will have a governing document that will be checking to see what legal structure you are. And within that governing document, you must have an asset lock. So your purposes are all towards charitable activities, and any profit that you have goes back into those charitable aims. So going on to governance. So you must have at least 3 unrelated members who are legally responsible for the organisation. And I think there's quite a lot of confusion around this point. So we often see a registered charity who might only have 2 trustees will apply to us with a document that has their management committee members, and they might have 5 or 6 management committee members. But we need the people who are legally responsible. So it's your trustees who are registered to the Charity Commission. We need at least 3 unrelated trustees. So even though you've got that 5-person management committee, what matters is those that are registered at the highest level. So if you're a company, we would want to see that you have at least 3 unrelated directors that are registered in Companies House. And what we will do is we'll check, if you're a registered charity and company, we'll be checking that both of them are registered. So just making sure that all your current and active trustees and directors are actually registered to either the Charity Commission or Companies House. And if you are a community group that isn't registered, then you will have a management committee, and then we will want to see that document with everyone's names written on there, and want to obviously see that there's 3 unrelated management committee members. Moving on to the next one, please. To be continued. So you must have a bank account that is the name of the organisation and not like a personal bank account. And you must have 2 unrelated signatories who are in place by the start of the grant. You must have a safeguarding policy, and that's obviously a children's and young people's safeguarding policy, and that must be reviewed in the last 2 years. And we've recently updated our website to include more information about that safeguarding policy and what we're actually looking for. And that's obviously because the nature of this fund, it's working in a very sensitive area with children and young people. We really want to make sure that we can see that process written down, because as a funder, that's the first stage, our first checks, to make sure that if we are going to be funding an organisation, we know they're really looking out and safeguarding the people that they're working for. So please make sure that you upload the safeguarding policy. If you have received LCF funding before, and if you've got any outstanding conditions, just make sure that you have addressed those. And that could be that you needed to update your safeguarding policy, and therefore make sure you've updated that before applying to this fund. And it might be that you have a monitoring report, which obviously at the end of the grant period, you have to complete an online grant monitoring form. If you haven't actually completed that monitoring form and the deadline has passed and you're about a month late, then you need to make sure you're getting in contact with someone from LCF and you're liaising with them, or you can just try and submit it and kind of write on there why it was late as well. And as I've just said earlier, if your income, so if you're not registered and your income is more than 5k, or this grant will take you over that, you need to make sure that you've submitted an application to the Charity Commission or Companies House. And what you would do is you get an email from them with a kind of confirmation of registration, and if you just upload that onto your application, that will be brilliant. Great, moving on please. So now just going to go over the fund criteria, and just to kind of put this fund into context. So we launched it in 2019. We've had 2 funding rounds so far. We've had 16 grants that have been made to 14 different organisations, and those organisations have done such incredible work in the community. There's already over 280 young people have been supported through this fund, so we really are amazed at the work that it's doing. So we've kept the fund criteria quite similar, just because we felt that we were getting the right organisations applying with projects and ideas that they wanted to do that really were tackling violence affecting young people. So your project must address violence affecting young people, because that is the aim of the fund, to tackle it obviously. So you must be working in one or more of the 3 following approaches. So you must be working with young people who are already affected by violence or criminal lifestyles, or your project will be delivering preventative work, or it will be addressing the root causes which lead to young people being affected by violence. So projects must run for no more than 2 years from the date the organisation hears from LCF, which I believe will be in about February. As has been said before, originally it was a 1-year grant, and now we've upped it to 2 years. So it's really up to you to decide whether you apply for 1 or 2 years. I think Elaine made a really good point beforehand that the project that they applied for and that they delivered was actually a pilot project, and we do support this, because I think sometimes actually a 1-year grant to do a pilot project, and then you kind of analyse it and see how you can improve that service, is actually quite effective. So it's not always necessary that you need a 2-year grant, but equally we completely understand that actually sometimes a 2-year grant really is necessary to have as big an impact as we want. So it's really up to you to decide whether you pick 1 or 2 years. So the project beneficiaries, the young people that you'll be working with, we want them to be living on or around the Peabody estates. So you must have at least 25% of those to be Peabody residents. So these are people you will be working with on this specific project. And then a further 50% must be social housing residents. So that can also include any other housing association that you might be working with. So organisations must demonstrate in their application. We've mentioned this before about the public participation framework. So we really want to be reading in your application how you've involved affected or interested young people in the design of the project. So you might be consulting with young people to design the project. They're applying for funding, which will be at the consult stage. And if you refer back to the fund guidance on page 5, or you might be giving your young people the power to make the decisions on the design and creation of the projects, which is the empower stage. So by kind of using that public participation framework and explaining how young people have been involved or how they will be involved, we'll be kind of identifying and understanding the level of young people's involvement for the project. So as you can probably tell from this presentation, in terms of from the whole event, youth voice is so important on this fund, and this is really addressing that gap that a lot of work for young people isn't actually led by young people. So we're really looking to identify the groups that really are working with young people. We also really want to make sure that the project is embedded in the community. And I saw in the chat, and we can come on to it later on, someone's asked, do I need to be based in the borough where I'm delivering work? And with that, I mean, you might not be based in the borough, but you might already be delivering work in a different borough that is obviously part of this fund. And I think as long as you can demonstrate how you're really embedded in that community and how you would engage local residents through the project, and also how you might already be making an impact in the community, then I think that's fine. But obviously, mainly we'll be looking at like a local organisation who'll be working in that community. Or if you can say, I'm based in Lambeth, but I want to deliver work in Southwark, and I've delivered work in Southwark in the past, and I've got a really kind of strong partnership working in the local area, then obviously that would be you're demonstrating that you're embedded in the community. So organisations delivering projects with the following outcomes will be prioritised. So you must be developing the personal and professional skills of young people, contributing to community cohesion, improving mental and physical health, and as I said before, focusing on the last 3 stages of the public participation framework. And I believe we're moving on to the next slide. So what is available? So we have just under £150,000 in this round. So it's an open application. If you see today that if you find out that you want to apply, mainly go back to your colleagues or people you work with, and just check that this is a right fit for your organisation. Obviously checking that your organisation is eligible to apply, and then you'll be working with young people to come up with a project. So grants of up to £10,000 per year over 2 years is available. So that's £20,000 in total across 2 years. You may decide actually we want to pilot a project in 1 year, in which case you can apply for up to £10,000. So we want to obviously fund organisations working with young people. The age range we're working with for this fund is 11 to 25. And the following boroughs that are on the presentation are Westminster, Southwark, Waltham Forest, Lambeth and Hackney. And you also need to show us how you're working in one or more of the different wards within those boroughs as well. So I think we're moving on to the next slide. So you now have until the Friday the 18th of November at midday to apply. Unfortunately, with this fund, there'll be no deadlines. So, sorry, no deadlines. There are lots of deadlines. There'll be no extensions. So make sure that you've got that date in your diary. You know that's coming up. You can start working on a project with your young people. And I would recommend obviously checking the eligibility criteria, making sure you are eligible. If there's something where you think actually we've only got 2 directors at the minute, but we really want to apply for this fund, we'd recommend looking into, is there anyone that you work closely with or a volunteer who would consider becoming a director, and then potentially inviting them to apply to be director in time for the fund, because I believe on Companies House it doesn't take too long to actually go through the registration process. Just working with organisations recently who've done it. So first of all, so after the deadline, which is, I'll say it again, Friday the 18th of November at 12 p.m, there'll be a shortlisting process, which will be done by Peabody and the young panellists. So as we've said before, this fund really is owned by young people. They'll be making the decisions about who's shortlisted based on the fund criteria. So shortlisted applicants will be contacted about the panel in December. So we'll also try and let groups that haven't got through to that stage because they weren't eligible, because they weren't shortlisted, because they didn't match the fund criteria, we'll also be letting you know in December to make sure that you obviously don't have to wait until the new year. What then happens is LCF, we then assess the organisation and we look at all different things like your governance, your finances, safeguarding, track record, your staff or volunteers' expertise, whether you've delivered any work for us in the past, and we'll make an assessment which will go to the panel, and that will be considered alongside a presentation by your organisation and mainly by the young people who've helped come up with this project. So we really want to be hearing from them about why they came up with the project and a bit more about it. And the young people on the panel will then decide who will actually get the funding. And so that'll be in January. So the 14th of Jan is when the panel will be, and decisions will then go out late January for the project to actually begin in February. So that's obviously February next year. Next slide, please. So I've said a bit about the panel, conscious of time, so I don't want to go through this in too much detail, but the panel will be young people, some of whom are kind of leading this presentation today. We'll be asking a staff member and 3 young people from your organisation to give a short presentation, so 5 minutes. And just through feedback, and as we said before, we really do want to be constantly evolving this fund based on feedback from people. And we understand that it's not always appropriate for a young person who might have experienced traumatic experiences to deliver a presentation on why they came up with the project. So we've given the option this year to do a pre-recorded video or written statement, but we are really hoping that the presentations will be either remote or in person, depending on what is easiest for your young people in your organisation. And that panel will be in January, and more information will come up on that if you do get through to the shortlisting stage. I'm conscious of time, just going to do a quick time check. I think I'm just about okay. I'll quickly whiz through this. So from everything I've just said, I think what I'm trying to kind of emphasize, what I'm trying to focus on today is, are you eligible? Is this the right fund for you? Please do go away and check those 2 things and try and really make sure this is the right fit for you before you actually write all the application, because obviously that is using your valuable time. Please do tell us about your organisation and how the project is youth led, and really use that public participation framework to explain how you are. If it's appropriate, we really do want young people to be paid for their time. We think that's really important. And just a kind of logistics thing, just make sure you save your application as you go along. You might also want to save it on a Word document, just so you have it kind of as reference on there. And final slide from me, I think, for now. So a good funding application, just a really quick one. What we really look for in a funding application is that it's a really clear fund fit. And this will be really important at the shortlisting stage when the panel are kind of considering, okay, who we're going to take through, who actually fits the fund. So just make sure, we hope that the fund criteria is clear. So make sure you're looking at each of those points and you're designing your project based on that. We really want to make sure you've got suitable proposed outcomes. Sometimes less is more. We're not always looking for the 2,000 people benefiting from a service. You might be working really kind of directly with 20 young people, and actually that could be even more effective. So just really thinking about your outcomes, being really specific in giving your project details, looking at the what, when, how often and where. We just really want to see that clear project structure, making sure that we're actually thinking, okay, how are they actually going to deliver this project? You might have a vision, but you might not have a really clear structure. And that might be the reason why you might not be shortlisted. So making sure everything's really clear. We also want to see that the whoever's delivering the project, staff members, volunteers, do they have appropriate experiences or experience and expertise? Are they supported by someone in your organisation? These are all things that we want you to talk about in your application, and there should be space for that on the application form. Also looking at the evidence of the needs, gaps, demands. Have you seen that there's a real gap in local provision doing a certain type of work for young people? Make sure you're really kind of talking about that in your application. We really want to see that. And also the sustainability piece. I think Elaine gave an amazing demonstration on this earlier. I think obviously doing that pilot project has enabled them to go on and do even more work with young people and even more different mentoring programs. So I think just kind of thinking about that future element. We know that you might not have an absolutely clear idea on it, but it's just thinking, okay, where could this take us next? Where could this help more young people or help our organisation develop? Also just looking at your budget. My recommendation would be, if you're doing a budget, just first of all use an Excel spreadsheet. It's a really quick way of making sure everything adds up. That's what I always use personally. But if you're not using that, whatever you do use, just making sure the budget adds up, it's clear, it's appropriate, everything's broken down. We are a real living wage funder. So I don't know if you know what that means, but it's basically, it's different from the national living wage. and it takes into account the actual real costs of living in London. So rather than just having a UK-wide one, it's a London-focused real living wage. And recently that's actually gone up to £11.95 per hour. So trying to take that into account, we really want to be funding real living wage costs. And also just looking at whether, if you do need to source other funding, do you have a plan in place to do that? We really want to be seeing that. And finally, monitoring procedure, evaluation is really important. We want to see how you'll actually be capturing the outcomes, because we want to know that by doing, especially if it's a pilot or any type of work really, if you're delivering a piece of work, how are you making sure that what you're doing is having an impact? We want to see how you're actually monitoring that to make sure that you can constantly be improving your work. And more on that is available on our website. And I think I've probably taken out all my time, so I'll hand over to the next person, which is MVP Media. So I believe we have Tamaya.
Hiya.
Oh, hi, Joanna. I'll pass over to you. Thank you.
Yes, thank you very much. Thank you for the conversation here. It's been really, really helpful. And Elaine, I'm probably going to say a lot of similar things, but but yeah, I'm just going to talk a little bit about what we've done. But I have the lovely Tamia here, who was a young person who was on the program, and I want her to give you more of her journey throughout this whole process. Yeah. So what I'm Joanna. I am the CEO at MVP Media. What we got funded for was what we call the Break Bread and Build sessions. So Break Bread and Build is basically break bread. We come together. So we were funded to pick up the young people, drop off the young people. It was for 12 to 16-year-olds. We did two rounds of it with 2 cohorts each. Tamia was one of the first cohorts on it. So it was for 12 to 16-year-olds, picking them up, coming down, having a sit-down meal together, having a mentoring session as well, and having also guest speakers that come in and speak about, so whatever life skills that we were speaking about, they kind of personified it and made it more applicable to the young people. That was in essence what we've done. So Tamia was an attendee. She started off as an attendee in the year 1. She then joined this youth steering committee that we then created because of this fund as well. Was also part of the panel when we applied again for the second round, which we then also were successful with. So thank you, Tamia. And then I want to also, then she became a volunteer on the next cohort of young people, and now is doing some amazing stuff. So I'm kind of going to ask her some questions, and she's going to kind of, give you a little bit of insight of what it's like being a young person on a project funded by Peabody. That's okay. So Tamia, so as an attendee, how did you, what were your highlights?
As an attendee, I'm also, as Joe said before, it's basically a break bread and build. So if we're speaking honestly, you go with a friend, you think, oh yeah, it's a free meal on the table, you kind of just get away from that school scenario, that school environment, and you also get away from home, because as a child, you don't really want to be going home straight from school at 3:30. It's that boring lifestyle. You want to go out after school with your friends, have something to eat, but it's not every day. Who wants to be really sitting in the chicken shop in that same environment and being labeled as them troubled teens, just them hooligans? So that's where me and my friends went. We got a free meal. It wasn't that cheap crisp one with sausage rolls. It was a decent hot meal we got, and then we got free transport as well, which was a cab there and back. So it was kind of very convenient, very trustworthy. There was communicating between the parents, because I know me personally, my mum's very, in the sense that she's very concerned, very worried, like especially with how life is right now and how life was a couple of years ago. It is very dangerous on the roads after a certain time for men and females. So being able to get transport there and back, and being able to communicate with the mentors and with like the CEO itself is very good. It's a very good aspect. So that was my highlight of being an attendee, let's say.
So after you were an attendee, and then I asked you to join the youth steering committee.
Yeah.
What did you do as part of the youth steering committee?
The youth steering committee, so I would still attend sessions. So that was every week, and it was, I would say it was 5:30. Yeah, 5:30. So it was around, let's say, dinner time. So which was still good, because we got that dinner meal, and it was very fulfilling for like a dinner meal. So as an attendee, we took part in sessions, and we spoke about what was happened in the session and we kind of, so you had like the mentor, but then you had a lot of attendees who did join the new year that was very shy, very like in their shell. And the thing is with attendees who are shy, they're not promised to come back, and we want our attendees to come back. We want them to be engaged, we want them to be engaged in the session. So as a youth, let's say ambassador, I was involved. I was really bringing the kids who were shy, communicating their ideas. If they didn't get certain things that the mentor was saying, or if it was going too fast, we would kind of add real life aspects of it in, and just, you know, kind of linking it all in one and just making it a bit more fun, enjoyable, and having that young people aspect in it.
Yep. So that's also partly Tamia was talking about her being a volunteer as well on the project, and being able to come and really because she's been through the process, she knows the process, and she knows how to speak to the young people as well. So she was my kind of like insight into the young people as well. And after the sessions, I'll be like, so Tamia, what's been going on with, you know? And she was able to like kind of really tell me what's going on. Now, so when you started with us, how was life?
When I started, I was 14 and I just moved to the area. I didn't really come from the best background. I was living in the council, temporary accommodation, which meant I lived in a lot of areas, and there were a lot of different areas. So I lived in Newham, I've lived in the borderline of London, and then I moved far into Essex. I was in Essex for 2 years, and then I moved to Chingford. So it was a thing where it was a very different environment, different people. Like I knew of people because a lot of my family do live in Waltham Forest, but it was very like, it was new and I didn't know how to fit in. So I was getting in trouble a lot. I was in my previous school, I've been to 3 secondary schools. So in my previous schools, I was being excluded, and this was like the borderline. They sat me down and was like, you need to behave or we're kicking you out. We're going to send you to a pupil referral. And my mum was like, no, I don't want to go. So it was being homeschooled, I would have been stripped from school completely. And I didn't want that. And I wasn't behaving myself. And I wasn't just like sitting down, and I was just getting into trouble with detentions, isolations for days on end, as in 2-week period of isolations. And what kid wants to be isolated from like their friends? And you don't go to school to be in isolation. You don't, what's the educational purpose in that? And so I was referred to MVP media, so let's say the Brave Britain Build, through school. They were like, we're going to give you this, like hopefully this kind of gives you like away from everything. And so I wasn't going to go, in all honesty, because I was thinking, why? I'm not doing it. But then when I went, no regrets. It was literally the biggest blessing, and it's got me really so far in life. And you learn so much things that you didn't realize that you were actually learning. And it wasn't like school where you sit down and you do your maths, or at home where you're if you get in trouble, your parents are going to shout at you or just be like, why are you doing this? It's literally an educational system, but without the typical educational system. And you learn so much, and it really just, I don't know how to say it, but it was a blessing in disguise kind of thing. And it did really change like my perspective of a lot of things.
So can you tell us a little bit about where you are now? What's happening? So how old are you now, and where are you now? And
I'm 17, so I've just finished school. I studied criminology, law, and psychology. I done okay in my GCSEs. Like I could have done better, obviously, if I put my mind to it more. I was working. I'm currently now at a new job. I'm on the student union at my school, so I take part in a lot of scrutiny meetings with the council. I meet up with Haringey's council, as that's where my college is based. So I represent my college a lot of the time, like mainly every week. We meet up with parents. I do open events at my school, so I represent my college a lot. I moved jobs, as I said. So I think if it was to really, and I come back and I always help with little things like this when I have the time to, because this is like where my heart is at the end of the day. This is kind of where everything stemmed from. It was like the little bean of the beanstalk. So yeah, that's currently where I am now.
Yeah. So thank you, Peabody, because this is kind of, you know, a really great example of what can happen when you get the funding and when you are able to work with young people. And again, going back to what you said before about, you know, taking it to 2 years, we had 2 years, and that's why we were able to really get to this point now. Yeah, so thank you. Yeah, that's us done. I think, like I said, I don't want to speak too much because, you know, she said it off. She continues to come, she continues to work with us, she continues to, you know, help us on projects, she continues to, you know, be part of the steering committee. And it's been all off of the back of this funding. So thank you.
No, thank you both so much. I think it's so incredible. I wasn't quite expecting your presentation today to actually hear from Tamaya and hear your experience. So really it's brave doing that. So I'm really, really appreciative. And just hearing about how this fund has impacted your life. So, and it's been great working with you, Joanna, over the last couple of years as well. So just thank you so much today.
Thank you, because this is what can happen, you know. This is like the beginning, because this is going to continue, you know.
Definitely. So yeah, amazing. Thank you so much. And if anyone has any questions for Tamaya and Joanna, or Elaine from earlier, I'll go on to the final, I think it's the timeline that we've got next, and then we have a Q&A section. So if anyone's got any questions, think of them now and write them down, and we'll have time soon to go through them. So just to go over the timelines again, so the closing date for the Young People's Fund round 3 is 12 p.m, which is midday on Friday the 18th of November. So it's been open for a week and a half now, and I think you've got a few more weeks to go. So make sure that after this meeting, if you feel really inspired by this and you've looked at the fund guidance and the criteria and the eligibility criteria, and you're ready to apply, then please do make sure that you kind of sign up to the application portal and you have a look at the application form to know what you need to include in there. So shortlisted groups will be contacted in December, and the panel meeting will take place on Saturday the 14th of January 2023. Decisions will then be released at the end of Jan for your project to start in Feb next year. So your project will either take place for 1 year, which means that it'll be ending around February 2024, or if you've got 2-year funding, it'll be around February or March 2025. Brilliant. Next slide, please. I think is that everything? I think that was a little sign up. I guess, where do you go? Actually, we probably should put the link to our website if someone could do that before we move on to the Q&A.
Sure.
Great.
I think there
it is
now on the screen. And if I'm correct, I think we're ready to head on to the Q&A quite soon. And so I believe we might do a pause in recording